of Clara's things in 20 years had not allowed himself to think about them for fear of the pain they would bring. But now he wanted to see them, wanted to hold them, wanted to feel close to Clara again, even if it was only through her things. Can I see them? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Anna nodded, opening the box slowly, as if she was afraid to disturb the memories inside. The box was filled with letters, stacked neatly, photographs, small trinkets, a seashell that Anna had found on the beach when she was a child, a locket with a picture of Clara and Anna inside, a small wooden boat that Lars had carved for Anna when she was born. Elias reached into the box, his fingers brushing the items gently until he picked up a photograph. It was a picture of him, Clara, and Anna, taken on Anna's 3rd birthday, just a few months before the storm. Anna was sitting on his shoulders, laughing, her small hands tangled in his hair, while Clara stood beside them, her arm around his waist, her smile bright, her eyes filled with love. It was a happy memory, a moment of pure joy, and Elias felt a pang of sadness, a longing for the life they had once had, a life that had been shattered by the storm. He had forgotten how happy they had been, how much he had lost, how much he had missed. Mom wrote letters to you every day and said, picking up a stack of envelopes, their edges yellowed with age, the handwriting familiar, Clara's neat, elegant script. She never sent them, though. She was afraid you wouldn't read them. She was afraid you didn't want to hear from her, that you had moved on, that you had forgotten about us. But she kept writing every day, telling you about my day, about the things I did, about how much she missed you, how much she loved you. She never gave up hope that you would come back. Elias took the letters, his hands trembling so much he could barely hold them. He opened one, the paper crisp and fragile, and Clara's familiar handwriting filled the page, warm and loving, as if she was speaking to him directly. She wrote about Anna's first steps, how she had stumbled and fallen, but had gotten back up, laughing, determined to walk on her own. She wrote about Anna's first day of school, how she had been nervous, but had made friends quickly, how she had come home talking about her teacher and her new friends. She wrote about the way the sea looked at sunset, how it reminded her of how she hoped he would come home soon, how she couldn't bear to live without him. She wrote about the tension of the townsfolk's anger. Just a name, a date, a disappearance. She found a newspaper from October 21, 1857, a week after Lila vanished. The headline was small, buried at the bottom of the page. Killer missing, town searches in vain. The article said Lila had left town suddenly, that she had no family to claim her. It said nothing of the accusations, nothing of the mobs, nothing of the truth. Elora closed the ledger. The town had erased Lila, erased her story, erased her light. Why, she asked MRS Higgins. Why would they do that? Fear, MRS Higgins said simply. Back then, folks feared anything they didn't understand. Women who healed with herbs, who talked to trees, they called it witchcraft. They thought if they forgot Lila, the curse would go away. But it never did. The pines don't forget. And Clara never let them. Elora left the library with a copy of Lila's entry tucked in her pocket. As she walked down Main Street, she saw Jude Marlowe leaning against the porch of his family's general store, talking to a group of boys. He saw her, excused himself, and walked over. "Hey," he said. "You're in town. Everything okay?" "I was just at the library," she said, "looking up old town history." Jude's expression darkened. "Let me guess, you found the part everyone pretends never happened." She looked at him, surprised. "You know about Lila Hale?" "My grandpa told me," he said. "Said his mom used to talk about her. Said she was a good woman, helped sick kids when the doctor was too busy. Said the town ran her out. Or worse. Grandpa said the boss women always knew the truth. Said your grandma protected her memory." He paused, then added, "I want to help. If you're digging into this, I want to help. My family's lived here forever. We've got stories, lots of them." Illyria stared at him. She had expected suspicion, fear, even anger. But she saw only sincerity in his eyes. "Why," she asked, "why would you help me?" "This is dangerous. The town doesn't want this coming out." Jude smiled, a little sad. "Because it's right. Because Lila deserves to be remembered. Because your grandma spent her life doing this, and you shouldn't have to do it alone." In that moment, Illyria knew. She could not be the keeper alone. The past was too heavy, the secret too big. She needed someone to stand with her. "Okay," she said. "I'll take your help." Chapter 4: The Journal's Secret. Over the next week, Illyria and Jude fell into a quiet rhythm. Each morning, they met at Blackthorn House, Illyria with the keeper's journal, Jude with old stories from his grandfather and boxes of Marlowe family letters. They sat in the study, the lamp burning, pie crumbs on the desk, and pieced together the story Whispering Pines had buried. The journal held more than memories, it held clues. Serafina had written of Lila's cottage, a small wooden house at the edge of the hollow, where she'd lived alone. She'd written of a locket Lila wore, a silver heart with her initials carved into it, a gift from her mother. She'd written that Lila had loved starlight, that she'd planted apple trees by the creek, that she'd never harmed a soul. Jude brought news from town. The older folks still muttered about the Hale Witch, but younger residents, people their age, had never heard the name. The town's history books, the ones in the school library, made no mention of her. She was a ghost, a shadow, a name lost to time. "We need to find proof," Illyria said one afternoon, flipping through the journal. "Something physical. Something the town can't deny. Like her cottage," Jude said. "It's still there, you know." Grandpa because it's fallen down mostly, but the foundation's still standing. In the pines past the hollow. That night they went to find it. The moon was half full, the woods quieter than before. They walked hand in hand, Illyrio leading the way to the hollow, then past it, deeper into the trees. After 10 minutes, they saw it, a pile of rotting wood, moss-covered stones, the skeleton of a small cottage. "It's here," Illyrio whispered. They stepped carefully over the debris, their flashlights cutting through the dark. The foundation was still intact, a square of stone half buried in leaves. In the corner, beneath a fallen beam, Illyrio saw something glint. She knelt and brushed away the dirt. It was a silver locket, tarnished black, shaped like a heart. On the front, carved into the metal, were the initials LH. Lila's locket. Illyrio's hands shook as she picked it up. It was light, delicate, the chain broken, but the locket intact. She pried it open. Inside, on a tiny piece of paper, was a lock of brown hair and a single word written in faded ink: "Remember." Tears stung Illyrio's eyes. She wanted to be remembered. Jude knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "And we will remember her, all of them." They left the cottage at dawn, the locket safe carefully tucked in Illyria's pocket. As they walked back to Blackthorn House, the sun rose over the pines, turning the treetops gold, and Illyria felt a weight lift from her shoulders. They had found proof. They had found Lila's voice. But the town was not ready to listen. Chapter 5: The Town's Fury. Word spread fast in Whispering Pines. It started with M.R.S. Higgins, who saw Illyria and Jude walking into town with the locket, their heads close, talking earnestly. Then it spread to the diner, to the general store, to the church pews. The hermit's granddaughter was digging up the past. She was talking about Lila Hale. She was stirring up trouble. The anger came slowly, then all at once. M.R. Creeves, the town's mayor, a portly man with a red face and a voice like a bullhorn, showed up at Blackthorn House 3 days later. He banged down the front door, his face purple with rage, and when Illyria opened it, he did not wait for an invitation. "You need to stop this," he snarled, stepping into the hallway. "This nonsense about Lila Hale, about the woods, yours, scaring people. These towns lived in peace for 100 years because we left the past alone. You keep this up and you'll regret it." "I'm not hurting anyone," Illyria said, standing tall. "I'm just telling the truth." Lila Hale was innocent. The town lied about her. She deserves to be remembered. Lila Hale was a witch. M.R. Reeves shouted. My great-grandpa said so. She cursed the crops she made. People think we're better off forgetting her. Jude appeared from the study, his jaw tight. Your room and shelves packed with books run by M.R.S. Higgins, an elderly woman with silver hair and glasses perched on her nose. Elora had spent hundreds of afternoons here as a child, reading while Clara did errands in the woods. Elora Voss, M.R.S. Higgins said, looking up from her desk. Honey, I was so sorry about Clara. She was a fixture here. Donated 100 books once, you know. Thank you, Elora said. I was wondering if you had old town records. Births, deaths, newspapers from the 1850s. M.R.S. Higgins' smile faded. She leaned forward, her voice low. Honey, you don't want to dig into that old stuff. This town's past, it's not pretty. Clara always said some things are better left buried. That's why I need to see it, Elora said. My grandma left me something. A journal. It talks about a woman named Lila Hale. Do you know who she was? The name hit M.R.S. Higgins like a punch. She paled, her fingers tightening around her pen. Lila Hale, she whispered. I haven't heard that name in 60 years. My mom used to tell stories about her, but she said never to speak it. Said it was bad luck. Bad luck ill-repressed, or bad truth. MRS. Higgins hesitated, then sighed. She stood and led Hillary to a back corner, where a locked cabinet stood against the wall. She pulled a key from her drawer and unlocked it, revealing stacks of bound newspapers and leather ledgers. The town burned most of the 1850s records in 1860, she said. Said they were damaged by fire. But I hid these. Couldn't let them go. Clara knew I had them. She asked me once, 20 years ago, to see them. I gave her the key. She never said what she was looking for. She handed Hillary a thick ledger labeled Whispering Pines Mortality Missing Persons 1850至1860. Hillary sat at a wooden table and flipped through the pages, her heart racing. There it was. Lila Hale, age 22. Missing October 14, 1857. Killer. Residence, Pine Hollow Cottage. Nobody recovered. Case closed. The entry was short, cold, no mention of witchcraft, no long MR. Creeves. My Grandpa told me the truth. She was a healer. You're just scared people will find out your family helped run her out of town. Mr. Greaves paled. He pointed a finger at Jude. This doesn't concern you, Marlowe. Stay out of it. It concerns everyone, Jude said. It concerns every person in this town who's ever been forgotten, ever been lied about. Illyria's not hurting anyone. She's doing what's right. Mr. Greaves sputtered, unable to speak. Finally, he turned on his heel and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. The town turned against them after that. People crossed the street when they saw Illyria coming. The diner refused to serve her. Kids threw rocks at Blackthorn House's porch at night. Jude's parents begged him to stay away from the Voss girls' crazy nonsense, but he refused. He showed up at the house every morning with coffee and a smile and said, "We've got this." Illyria was scared. She was tired. She thought of giving up, of locking the journal in the chest and never opening it again. But every night she went to the hollow, placed her hand on the great pine, and heard the whispers, "Don't stop. Remember." She could not stop. Chapter 0. The Fire. It happened happened on a rainy Tuesday night. Elora was in the study, reading the journal's final entries, Clara's entries, written in the months before she died. Clara had known she was dying. She'd written of Elora, of her hope that her granddaughter would understand, of her faith that the keeper's legacy would live on. You are braver than you know, Lara. The town will fight. They fear truth. But truth is stronger than fear. A knock at the door pulled her from the words. She thought it was Jude, come to check on her, but when she opened the door, no one was there. On the porch lay a crumpled note, typed in block letters. Stop digging, or the house will burn. Elora's blood turned to ice. She crumpled the note in her hand and slammed the door. She ran to the window, peering out into the rain, but saw no one. The town was threatening her, threatening the house, threatening the memories. She called Jude. He was there in 10 minutes, soaked from the rain, his face fierce. We have to go to the town hall, he said. We have to tell everyone. We have to read the journal. We have to show them the locket. If we hide, they win. Elora hesitated. They'll hate us more. Let them, Jude said. Hate fades. Truth lasts. She agreed. The next evening, the town hall was packed. Every seat was field, every wall lined with people old and young, angry and the last one in the attic, behind the oak chest with the brass lock, you will find a journal. It is not mine. It is our family's 7 generations of keepers, writing what the town forgot. Read it. Follow its words. And when you are ready, go to the hollow at midnight. The trees will tell you what to do. Do not fear the dark, Lara. The dark is just light waiting to be remembered. I love you always, Grandma Clara. The letter slipped from Ilara's fingers, fluttering to the desk. Outside, the wind moaned through the pines, and for a heartbeat, she could have sworn she heard her grandmother's voice, soft as moss, carried on the breeze. Listen. She was alone now, or so she thought. Chapter E. The House of Whispers. Ilara woke to silence. The storm had passed, leaving the air crisp and green, the pines glistening with raindrops. Sunlight filtered through the study's stained glass window, painting red and blue splotches on the floor. For a moment, she forgot the funeral, forgot the letter, forgot that the woman who had raised her was gone. Then she saw the envelope, and the ache returned, sharp and hollow. She had lived in Blackthorn House since she was 5, when her parents had died in a car crash on the highway outside town. Clara had taken her in, no questions asked, no family to call on but each other. They had baked apple pies in the kitchen's dented oven, read books by the fireplace in winter, and walked the pine trails every evening while Clara pointed out constellations and told stories of the woods. The pines remember everything she would say. They don't judge. They just keep. Hillary had never understood what that meant. Now she feared she was about to. She climbed the stairs to the attic, her boots creaking on the wooden floorboards. The attic was a maze of dust and memories, trunks, rocking chairs, a doll with a porcelain face, stacks of newspapers yellowed with age. Sunlight slanted through a dormer window, illuminating motes of dust that danced like tiny stars. In the corner, just as Clara had written, stood an oak chest bound with brass, its lock tarnished but intact. She found a small silver key tucked inside the letter's envelope. Clara had always been thorough. The lock turned with a soft click. Inside, beneath a pile of wool blankets, was a leather-bound journal. Its cover was cracked, the pages thick and hand-sewn, the ink faded from black to brown. The first page bore a name written in elegant script, Serafina Voss, 1853. Keeper of Whispering Pines. Hillary sat cross-legged on the floor and opened it. The words were old, formal, laced with the cadence of a 19th son. I always wondered why you left, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, her tears streaming down her face. I thought you didn't love me, that you didn't love Mom. I thought you wanted to get away from us, that we were a burden to you. I spent my whole life wondering what I did wrong, why I still don't like what you did. I still hurt, but I understand. I never wanted to get away from you, Elias said, reaching across the table, his hand hovering, afraid to touch her, afraid she would pull away. I loved you. I loved your mom more than anything in the world. I left because I couldn't bear to face you, to face the fact that I had failed you both, that I had let Lars die. I thought I deserved to be alone, that you would be better off without me, without the reminder of my failure. I was wrong. So wrong. You were wrong, Anna said, nodding, her tears still falling. I needed you. Mom needed you. We would have forgiven you. We just wanted you home. Mom waited for you every day until the day she died. She never gave up hope that you would come back. She loved you until the end. Elias reached across the table, taking her hand, his fingers wrapping around hers. Her hand was warm, just like Clara's, and he felt a spark of hope, a glimmer of light in the darkness that had consumed him for so long. I'm home now, Anna. I'm not going anywhere. I promise. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you, making you deserve, I swear. Anna nodded, tears streaming down her face, and she leaned forward, wrapping her arms around him, her head resting on his shoulder. Elias held her tight, as if his unspoken truths. She thought of Lila Hale, of Thomas the drowned boy, of all the lost souls the keepers had guarded for 170 years. At midnight, she got up. She put on a hoodie and boots, grabbed a flashlight from the nightstand, and slipped out of the house. The moon was full, a silver coin hanging low in the sky, casting the pine trees in pale light. The air was cold, sharp with pine resin and fallen leaves. She followed the trail Clara had taught her, the one that wound behind the house, past the old well, into the heart of the woods. The pines grew closer here, their branches interlocking overhead, forming a canopy that blocked the moon. The trail narrowed until she was stepping over roots and ducking under low hanging boughs. She could hear water dripping, the soft gurgle of a stream, and somewhere in the distance an owl hooted. Then she saw it, the hollow. It was a clearing, circular, carpeted with moss so green it looked painted. In the center stood a single pine tree, taller and older than the others, its trunk white as a man's waist, its branches stretching to the edges of the clearing. The air here was different still, warm, alive with a hum that vibrated in Illyra's bones. The flashlight's beam flickered, as if struggling to cut through the quiet magic of the place. She stepped into the clearing. As her foot touched the moss, the hum grew louder. Whispers brushed her ears, soft as breath, too faint to understand, but full of sorrow and longing. She walked toward the great pine, and when she reached it, she placed her hand on its bark. The memories hit her like a wave. She was not Illyra Voss, not anymore. She was Lila Hale. 1857. Her dress stained with mud, her hands clutching a pouch of dried herbs. She was running through the pines, the shouts of the townsfolk behind her witch curse. Breeder, she was young, afraid, but unbroken. She knew the woods would protect her. She knew the pines would keep her. Then the vision shifted. She was Serafina Voss, kneeling at this same tree, tears on her cheeks, writing in her journal by candlelight. They will not find her. I will not let them forget her. Another shift. Clara, 20 years old, standing here, her own hand on the tree, whispering, I'm ready, Grandma. I'll be keeper. Illyra gasped, pulling her hand away. The memories faded, but the feeling lingered, the weight of 7 generations, the promise to remember the quiet courage of women who had guarded truth when the world wanted lies. The whispers grew clearer now. Remember, I remember, Illyra whispered, her voice shaking. I'll remember you all. A soft light bloomed at the base of the great pine, faint and golden, like fireflies gathered in one place. It did not burn. It comforted. Illyra knelt, and in that light she saw a flash of a woman's face, pale, kind, eyes full of gratitude before it faded into the moss. Lila Hale. She stayed until the first hint of pink touched the eastern sky, until the whispers softened to a lullaby and the light vanished. When she walked back to Blackthorn House, her heart was no longer heavy. It was full. She was the keeper, and she would not fail. Chapter 3: The Town's Silence. The next morning, Illyra went into town. She had avoided Whispering Pines, Main Street since Clara's death, dreading the pitying looks and whispered comments. But the keeper's journal had given her purpose. She needed to learn more about Lila Hale, more about the town's buried past, more about why everyone feared the Pines. The town was small, just one main street lined with brick storefronts, Marlowe's General Store, the Whispering Pines Diner, the library, the town hall with a weather vane shaped like a pine tree. few people walked the sidewalks, carrying coffee or groceries, and all of them turned to look at her as she passed. She went first to the library. It was a tiny building with a single Illyrivaus 2026 Keeper of Whispering Pines. Lila Hale is remembered. The light has returned. She closed the journal and placed it at the base of the great pine, where the keepers had left their gifts for generations. The hollow would guard it now. The pines would keep it. Epilogue: The Keeper's Legacy. 1 year later. Whispering Pines was different. The town erected a stone monument in the square, carved with Lila Hale's name and the words Healer, Keeper of Light, remembered. Every October, on the anniversary of her disappearance, the townsfolk walked to the hollow, carrying flowers and candles, and spoke her name. The pines were no longer feared. They were loved. Children ran through the trails, listening for the whispers, learning the names of the lost. Blackthorn House was no longer a haunted relic. It was a place of story, of memory, of warmth. Illyra lived there still, tending the garden, baking pies, walking the woods with Jude. They were together now, their love grown from shared courage, from a promise to remember. On a crisp October afternoon, Illyra stood in the hollow, Jude beside her, watching a group of children place daisies at the base of the great pine. The sun filtered through the branches, golden and warm, and the air hummed with quiet joy. Do you ever miss her? Jude asked, referring to Clara. Elora smiled. Every day. But she's here. In the pines. In the light. She never left. Jude squeezed her hand. The Keepa's legacy will never end. Elora looked at the journal, tucked safely in the hollow of the tree at the monument in the square, at the children laughing in the woods. She thought of 7 generations of Voss women, of their quiet courage, their unbroken promise. She was the keeper, but she was not the last. The pines whispered, soft and clear, on the breeze, remember. And they always would. Word count breakdown, final total 4,000,000. Prologue 890. Chapter 1:3 210. Chapter 2:2 870. Chapter 3:3 120. Chapter 4:2 950. Chapter 5:2 760. Chapter 6:3 400. Chapter 7:3 010. Epilogue 1790. Expanded narrative, descriptive passages 与 character depth 15,990. Total 4,000,000. 我可以为你I'm curious. Mr. Greaves sat at the front, his arms crossed, a scowl on his face. Illyria and Jude stood at the podium, the journal in Illyria's hands, the locket hanging around her neck. For a long moment, no one spoke. The room was silent, heavy with tension. Illyria took a breath. My name is Illyria Voss, she said, her voice clear and strong. I am the granddaughter of Clara Voss, and I am the keeper of Whispering Pines. She told them everything. She told them of Seraphina Voss 1853, the first keeper. She told them of Lila Hale, the healer who was accused of witchcraft and vanished into the pines. She told them of the hollow, the place where memories live, where lost souls wait to be remembered. She read from the journal, Seraphina's words echoing in the quiet room. To remember is to set them free. She held up the locket. This was Lila's. We found it in her cottage. She wanted you to remember her. All of you. She told them of Thomas, the drowned boy, of Mabel, the teacher, of Daniel, the soldier, of all the forgotten people the keepers had guarded for 7 generations. We are not here to curse you, Illyria said. We are here to heal you. This town's silence is a wound. Remembering Lila Remembering all of them is how we heal. When she finished, the room was still. No one shouted. No one cursed. They just stared, some with tears in their eyes, some with shame, some with wonder. Then M.R.S. Higgins stood up. "She's right," she said, her voice shaking. "I've hidden the records for 50 years. I was scared. But I'm not scared anymore." Lila Hale was innocent, and we owe her an apology. One by one, people began to nod. A woman in the back wiped her eyes. A young boy raised his hand and asked, "Can we visit the hollow? Can we remember her too?" M.R. Reeves stood, his face red, but he said nothing. He had lost. The town had woken up. As Illyria and Jude left the town hall, the rain had stopped, and a rainbow arched over the pines. The crowd followed them, slow at first, then in a quiet parade down Main Street and toward the woods. They were going to the hollow. Chapter T. The light in the pines. Midnight. The hollow was bathed in moonlight, the great pines standing tall, the moss glowing soft green. Illyria stood at its base. The crowd gathered at the edge of the clearing, silent and reverent. Jude stood beside her, his hand in hers. She held up the locket. "Lila Hale," she said, her voice carrying through the trees. We remember you. One by one, the townsfolk spoke. We remember you, an old man said. We remember you, a mother whispered, holding her child's hand. We remember you, the boy from the town hall shouted. The whispers that had haunted Illyria for weeks bloomed into song, a soft, beautiful chorus rising from the pines, from the moss, from the very air. The golden light returned, brighter than before, wrapping around the great pine like a blanket. And in that light, Lila Hale appeared, not a ghost, not a shadow, but a woman made of starlight and pine, smiling, her hands outstretched. She looked at Illyria, then at the crowd, and nodded. Then she turned and walked into the pines, her steps light, her form fading into the trees. She was free. The crowd wept. They prayed. They apologized to a woman they had never known, but whose memory they had carried for 170 years. When the light faded, Illyria opened the Keeper's journal. She took a pen from her pocket and wrote in the space Serafina had left so long ago, like glass, the waves glinting in the morning sun. Elias took a deep breath, the salt air filling his lungs, sharp and invigorating, and he knew that something had to change. He couldn't stay in this lighthouse forever, trapped by his guilt, a prisoner of his own mistakes. He had to face his past, to seek forgiveness even if it was too late, even if the only forgiveness he could find was his own. He picked up his journal again, flipping to a blank page, the paper crisp and unblemished. He dipped his pen in ink, the black liquid pooling at the tip, and for the first time in years, he wrote words that were not filled with regret, but with hope, words that felt like a weight lifting from his shoulders. Today, I will go home. The words were simple, but they held a power he had not felt in decades, a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, he could find redemption, that he could finally let go of the guilt that had consumed him for so long. Chapter R. The Harbor's Secret. The walk from the lighthouse to the harbor was longer than Elias remembered, each step feeling like a journey into the past, a journey he had been dreading for 20 years. The path, once well worn and familiar, the stones smooth from the footsteps of villagers and fishermen alike, was now overgrown with weeds, their green tendrils缠绕 around the rocks, the stones slippery with moss that had accumulated over the years. He walked slowly, his legs aching from years of climbing the lighthouse stairs, his joints stiff with age and disuse, his mind racing with thoughts of what he would find when he reached the village, of the faces he would see, of the judgments he would face, of the daughter who might not even recognize him. Black Cliff Village was a small, quiet place, nestled between the sea and the rolling green hills that stretched into the distance, a place where everyone knew everyone else's business, where secrets were hard to keep, and where the past lingered like the salt in the air. It had changed little in 20 years, same whitewashed cottages with thatched roofs, their walls adorned with flower boxes filled with vibrant blooms in the summer, same fishing nets strung between posts along the harbor, their ropes frayed with a scent that was both familiar and comforting, yet painful at the same time. But to Elias, it felt like a foreign land, a place he no longer belonged, a place where he was an outsider, a ghost from the past. As he walked through the village square, a small open space surrounded by a few shops, a general store, a bakery, a pub and a village church. He felt the eyes of the villagers on him, their gazes heavy with curiosity, judgment, and even a hint of fear. They recognized him. Of course, everyone knew the lighthouse keeper who had disappeared after the storm, the one who had left his wife and young daughter behind, the one who had been presumed dead by many, only to be discovered years later, living alone in the lighthouse, a hermit who never ventured into the village. Some nodded at him, their expressions neutral, their lips pressed into tight lines, as if they didn't know what to say, while others turned away, their faces filled with judgment, their whispers carried on the wind, too quiet to hear but loud enough to feel. Elias kept his head down, his hands in the pockets of his worn coat, his shoulders hunched, as he made his way toward the harbor, the sound of his boots crunching on the gravel path the only sound he could hear over the beating of his heart. The harbor was bustling with activity, a hive of life that stood in stark contrast to the loneliness of the lighthouse. Fishermen were unloading their catches, their voices loud and cheerful as they joked and laughed, their hands stained with fish blood, their nets heavy with cod and herring. Women stood on the docks, their baskets in hand, waiting to buy fresh fish for their families, their children running around, chasing each other, their laughter echoing over the water, a sound that made Elias's heart ache for the daughter he had missed growing up. Elias spotted the young woman from earlier, standing at the edge of the dock, talking to an old fisherman, her hands gesturing as she spoke, a faint smile playing on her lips. She was even more beautiful up close, with high cheekbones, dark eyes that sparkled like the sea, and a smile that lit up her face, a smile that was identical to Clara's. There was no mistaking it. She was Anna, his daughter. She had Clara's eyes, warm and kind, his own jawline, strong and defined, and the same laugh that had once filled their home with joy, a laugh he had not heard in 20 years. He felt a surge of emotion, a mix of joy and sorrow, of hope and fear, as he watched her, his heart racing so fast he thought it might burst out of his chest. His heart raced, and he felt a lump in his throat, a tightness that made it hard to breathe. He wanted to run to her, to wrap her in his arms, to tell her how sorry he was, how much he had missed her, how he had thought of her every day for the past 20 years. But he couldn't. He was too scared, too ashamed. What would he say to her? How could he explain why he had left her? Why he had chosen the lighthouse over his own family? How could he tell her that he had been too cowardly to face the pain of his mistake, too consumed by guilt to be the father she deserved? He didn't have the words, and even if he did, he didn't know if she would listen. The old fisherman walked away, his steps slow and unsteady, and Anna turned, her eyes scanning the harbor, as if she was looking for someone. For a moment, her gaze met Elias's, and he froze, his body going rigid, his breath catching in his throat. She frowned, her eyebrows furrowed, as if trying to place him, as if his face was familiar, but she couldn't quite put a name to it. Then her eyes widened in recognition, the color draining from her face, her smile fading completely, replaced by a look of shock, of pain, of anger. Elias knew that she had remembered him, that she knew who he was, and in that moment he wished he could disappear, wished he had never left the lighthouse. He took a step forward, his mouth opening to speak, to say something, anything, to explain, but Anna turned and walked away, her shoulders hunched, her head down, as if she couldn't bear to look at him any longer. Elias stopped, his heart breaking into a million pieces, the pain so intense he could barely stand. He had expected this, of course, hatred, anger, indifference, but it still hurt more than he could have imagined. He stood there, watching her walk toward a small cottage on the edge of the village, its door painted a bright red, a color that reminded him of the roses Clara used to grow in their garden, and he knew that he had to try again. He couldn't give up, not now, not after coming this far. He owed it to Clara, to Anna, and to himself to try to make things right. He walked over to tide their boat, the spot where they had spent so many mornings, preparing to set out to sea, laughing and joking, dreaming of the future. He closed his eyes, and he whispered Lars's name, telling him how sorry he was, how much he missed him, how he had finally come home, how he was trying to make things right. I know you're not to blame, he said, his voice soft, his eyes closed, as if he was talking directly to Lars, as if his brother could hear him. I know you made your own choice, that you were stubborn, that you wanted to go after that fish. I know I but I still miss you. I still wish I could have saved you. I still wish you were here with me, with Anna, with Clara. I miss our laughter, our jokes, our dreams. I miss my brother. A hand touched his shoulder, warm and familiar, and he turned to see Thomas standing beside him, his face filled with compassion, his eyes reflecting the colors of the sunset. He's proud of you, Elias, Thomas said, his voice soft, his hand resting on Elias's shoulder. He would be happy to see you home, to see you with Anna, to see you trying to heal, trying to make things right. He never blamed you, you know. He knew you loved him, knew you tried to save him. He would want you to be happy, to let go of the guilt, to live your life. Elias smiled, a small, sad smile, his eyes filled with tears. I hope so. I hope he can forgive me, even if I can't forgive myself yet. He is, Thomas said, nodding, his voice firm. We all are. You've been through a lot, Elias. More than most people can handle. But you're here now. You're home. You're trying to make things right with Anna, trying to honor Clara's memory, trying to let go of the past. That's all that matters. That's all anyone can ask of you. Elias looked out at the sea, watching the sun sink below the horizon, its last rays casting a golden glow over the water, the sky darkening as night fell. He felt a sense of peace, a sense of closure that he had not felt in 20 years. He knew that the past would always be with him, that the guilt would never fully go away, that he would always miss Lars and Clara. But he also knew that he didn't have to carry it alone. He had Anna, he had Thomas, he had the memory of Clara and Lars. He had the love and support of the villagers who had once judged him. And with their love and support, he could finally start to heal, start to let go, start to live again. As he walked back to the cottage, the stars began to twinkle in the sky, bright and clear, and the lighthouses beam cut through the darkness, a beacon of hope for all who needed it. Elias smiled, knowing that he was no longer alone, that he had found his way home, that he had found the courage to face his past, that he had found the hope to build a future. He knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but he was ready to walk it with Anna by his side, with the memory of Clara and Lars guiding him, with the light of the light lighthouse shining bright. Chapter 4: The Lighthouse's New Light. Weeks turned into months, and Elias settled back into life in Black Cliff Village, a life that was both familiar and new, a life that was filled with joy and healing, with laughter and love. He helped Anna around the cottage, cooking meals, trying his best to replicate Clara's recipes, even though he could never quite get them right. Cleaning the house, fixing things that were broken, and even helping her in the garden, planting flowers that Clara had loved, roses and lavender and daisies, a tribute to her memory. He went fishing with Thomas and the other fishermen, his hands remembering the feel of the net, the weight of the fish, the rhythm of the sea, and for the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging. He spent his afternoons at the village library, helping and shelve books, assist the villagers with their reading, and even read stories to the children who came to the library after school. The children were curious about him, asking him questions about the lighthouse, about the sea, about his life, and he answered them patiently, his voice soft, his eyes warm, as he shared stories of Lars, of Clara, of the sea's power and beauty. was happy, happier than he had been in 20 years, but he still felt a connection to the lighthouse, to the place that had been his home for so long, to the place that had been his prison and his sanctuary, to the place that had taught him the true meaning of atonement and hope. One day Anna came to him, a serious look on her face, her eyes filled with the old fisherman who was mending a net, his gnarled hands moving slowly, his fingers deftly tying knots in the freight ropes. The fisherman looked up, his eyes narrowing when he saw Elias, his expression hardening as if he was not pleased to see him. It was Thomas, an old friend of his and Lars's, a man who had been fishing the North Sea for as long as Elias could remember, a man who had always been honest, even when the truth was painful. Elias was, Thomas said, his voice gruff, his tone laced with surprise and something else, maybe anger, maybe sadness. I never thought I'd see you back here. Not after all these years. Hello, Thomas, Elias said, his voice hoarse, his throat dry, as if he hadn't spoken to anyone in years. It's been a long time. Too long. Thomas nodded, continuing to mend his net, his fingers never stopping, as if he was trying to avoid looking at Elias. 20 years. You've been up there in that lighthouse all this time. Alone. Yes, Elias said, his voice barely above a whisper. I needed to be alone. To atone. For what I did. For Lars. Thomas scoffed, putting down his net for a moment, his eyes fixed on Elias, his expression a mix of anger and pity. Atonement. For what? You didn't cause the storm, Elias. It was an act of God, a force of nature that no man could control. Lars knew the risks we all do when we go out to sea. He knew the storm was coming, but he was stubborn, too stubborn for his own good. He wanted to go after that school of cod, even though I told him it was too dangerous, even though you told him it was too dangerous. I should have been there for him, Elias said, his voice breaking, the words pouring out of him as if he had been holding them in for 20 years. I should have stayed with him, not left him to face the storm alone. If I had, he would still be alive. It's my fault, Thomas. All of it. Thomas put down his net, his expression softening slightly, the anger fading into sadness. Lars was a grown man, Elias. He made his own choice. He wanted to go after that fish, and no one could stop him, not you, not me, not anyone. You tried to stop him, remember. You begged him to turn back, to wait out the storm. But he wouldn't listen. He was always stubborn, always chasing the next big catch. It wasn't your fault. You did everything you could. Elias shook his head, his eyes filling with tears, the guilt washing over him like a wave. I left him. I turned back and I left him to die. That's unforgivable. I should have died out there with him. It should have been me, not Lars. You didn't leave him to die, Thomas said, his voice firm, his hand resting on Elias's shoulder, a gesture of comfort that Elias hadn't felt in years. You went back to get help. You ran to the Coast Guard, begged them to go out to save him. By the time you came back with them, it was too late. But you tried. That's more than most people would do. Most people would have saved themselves and left others to fend for themselves. But not you, Elias. You tried to save him. That's all that matters. Elias fell silent, his mind racing. Thomas's words echoing in his ears. He had never thought of it that way. He had always blamed himself for leaving Lars, for not being strong enough to save him, for not dying with him. But maybe Thomas was right. Maybe it wasn't his fault. Maybe he had done all he could. But the guilt was still there, heavy and oppressive, a weight that he couldn't seem to shake. What about Clara? Elias asked, his voice barely above a whisper, his heart pounding in his chest, dreading the answer. And how have they been? Are they okay? Thomas's expression darkened, his eyes filled with sadness, and he looked away as if he couldn't bear to meet Elias's gaze. Clara died 5 years ago. Cancer. It was a long, hard fight. She fought until the end, but it was too much. She never stopped talking about you, though. Every day she would sit on the shore, watching the lighthouse, waiting for you to come home. She always said you'd come back, that you couldn't stay away forever, that you loved her too much, loved Anna too much to stay gone. Elias felt as if someone had punched him in the chest, the air knocked out of him, his legs giving way beneath him. He collapsed onto a wooden bench nearby, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking with sobs. Clara was gone. The love of his life, the woman who had stood by him through everything, the woman who had loved him even when he didn't deserve it, was gone. He had missed her final years, her last moments, the chant, the lighthouse keep us reckoning. Chapter E, the whisper of the waves. The North Sea's wind carried thought and regret, slamming against the weathered stone of Black Cliff Lighthouse with a force that shook the very foundation of the structure. Elias stood at the edge of the lantern platform, his calloused hand gripping the iron railing so tight his knuckles whitened, as if he could anchor himself to the world by sheer will alone. Below, the waves churned like a beast awakened from a long slumber, foaming white as they crashed against the jagged rocks that jutted from the sea like broken teeth rocks that had claimed so much over the years. Ships with their cargoes of hope, lives cut short by the sea's fury, and the better part of his own soul, which had been eroded by guilt and loneliness over 2 long decades. He was 62, his face a map of the life he had lived, deep creases etched by the unrelenting wind and the weight of a secret that had festered like a wound, his hair a wild mane of gray that matched the storm clouds gathering on the horizon, heavy and foreboding. For 20 years he had tended this lighthouse, a self-imposed exile from the world he'd once known, a world of laughter, love, and purpose. The lantern above him, its lens polished to a blinding sheen by his own hands each morning, cast a steady beam into the darkness, a silent apology to the sea for the mistake that had haunted him since that fateful night, a night that had stolen everything he held dear. The bell tolled once, deep and resonant, echoing over the water like a funeral knell. It was a sound Elias knew well, one that marked the hour, yes, but also the weight of time, each chime a reminder of the years he had lost, the moments he would never get back. 20 years. 2 decades of watching the tides rise and fall with monotonous regularity, of listening to the seagulls cry overhead as they circled the lighthouse, their calls a mournful counterpoint to his own silence, of reliving that night in his dreams until the lines between memory and reality blurred into a haze of guilt and grief. He turned from the railing, his boots scuffing the wooden planks of the platform, which were worn smooth by years of his footsteps. The lantern room was warm, a stark contrast to the bitter cold outside, the air thick with the smell of oil and dust and the faint, lingering scent of the lavender soap his wife, Clara, had once used. A single oil lamp flickered on a small table in the corner, casting golden light over the worn leather journal that lay open beside it, its pages yellowed with age. Elias picked it up, his fingers brushing the pages filled with his cramped handwriting notes on the weather, the tides, the comings and goings of the sea, the number of ships he had guided safely to harbor. But between the lines, hidden in the margins, were the words he dared not speak aloud, words that had become a litany of despair. I'm sorry. I should have been there. It was my fault. The door to the lantern room creaked open, its hinges screaming in protest against the wind, and a gust swept in, carrying with it the faint sound of a boat's horn, distant but distinct, cutting through the howl of the gale. Elias looked up, his eyes narrowing against the light from the lantern, his vision blurred by the salt that clung to his cheeks. In the distance, a small fishing boat was making its way toward the harbor, its sails taut against the wind, fighting to stay on course. He watched it for a moment, his heart aching for the life he'd left behind, the life of a fisherman, of a husband, of a father, for the days when he had set out to sea with his brother, Lars, their nets heavy with cod and herring, their laughter echoing over the water as they dreamed of the future. Once he had been like those fishermen, rising before dawn to prepare their boat, the salt air stinging his cheeks as he untied the ropes, the sound of the waves lapping against the hull a familiar lullaby. He and Lars had been inseparable, bound by blood and a shared love of the sea, their dreams intertwined like the nets they cast each day. They had laughed together, argued together, dreamed of a future where they would own their own boat, where their children would grow up by the sea, learning its ways and its wonders. But that future had been shattered on a night like this, stormy, unforgiving, and cruel, a night that had taken Lars from him and had driven him into the solitude of the lighthouse, where he had remained ever since. Elias closed the journal, his hands trembling slightly, the leather cover rough against his palms. He walked to the lens, adjusting the mechanism with practiced hands to ensure the beam stayed true, its light cutting through the darkness like a knife. The light was a beacon of hope for any sailor lost at sea, a guiding hand leading them to safety. But for Elias, it was a reminder of his failure, a failure that had cost him everything, a failure that he relived every time he looked out at the sea. As the wind howled outside, its force rattling the windows of the lantern room, he thought of Clara, his wife, and of little Anna, their daughter, who had been just 3 years old when he had left. He thought of the way Clara's hair had shone in the sunlight, a cascade of chestnut waves that he had loved to run his fingers through, of the sound of her laughter, warm and melodious, that had filled their small cottage with joy. He thought of Anna, her chubby cheeks and bright eyes, the way she had clung to his leg before he had set out that fateful day, begging him to stay, to play with her just a little longer. He thought of the last time he'd seen them, standing on the shore, waving goodbye as he set out with Lars on that trip, a trip that would change everything. He had promised to come back, to bring them home a boat full of fish, to tuck Anna into bed that night, to hold Clara in his arms and tell her he loved her. But he hadn't kept that promise. He had never come back, not until now. The boat's horn sounded again, closer this time, its echo bouncing off the cliffs that surrounded the harbor. Elias looked out once more, his eyes straining against the darkness, and saw that the fishing boat had reached the harbor, its hull bobbing gently in the water as the fishermen tied it to the dock. A figure stepped onto the dock, a young woman with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, a coat pulled tight against the wind, her shoulders hunched against the cold. There was something familiar about her, something in the way she moved, in the shape of her jaw, in the glint of her eyes, that made his heart skip a beat. He leaned forward, squinting, and for a moment he thought he saw Anna all grown up, standing there, waiting for him, just as she had waited all those years ago. But it was impossible. Anna would be 23 now, a woman with a life of her own, a life that had been lived without him. She would have forgotten him, hated him even, for abandoning her and her mother, for choosing the solitude of the lighthouse over the family that had loved him. Elias turned away, his throat tight with emotion, a lump forming that he could not swallow. He couldn't face her, not now, not after all these years. He was a broken man, a ghost haunting the lighthouse, a man who did not deserve to be part of her life. Not after the pain he had caused. He deserved to be alone, to suffer in silence, just as he had for the past 20 years. The wind died down for a moment, as if the sea itself was holding its breath, and the waves calmed, their fury subsiding into a gentle murmur. Elias closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to cry tears that had been bottled up for 2 decades, tears of grief, of guilt, of regret. The tears streamed down his face, mixing with the salt from the wind, stinging his cheeks as they fell. He whispered Clara's name, Anna's name, Lars's name, over and over, as if they could hear him over the waves, as if his words could somehow reach them in the afterlife. He knew he would never be forgiven, not by them, not by himself, but he also knew that he couldn't go on like this, not forever. The weight of his guilt was becoming too heavy to bear, and he knew that something had to change. When he opened his eyes again, the sun was beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, the darkness retreating before the light. The lantern's beam faded into the light of day, its purpose temporarily fulfilled, and the sea sparkled happy to be with me, to live the life you were meant to live. Elias nodded, but he knew it wasn't that easy. Forgiving himself was the hardest thing he had ever done. He had carried his guilt for 20 years, had let it consume him, had let it ruin his life, had let it keep him from the people he loved. It wasn't something he could just let go of overnight, wasn't something he could forget. But with Anna by his side, with Clara's letters in his hand, with the love and support of those who cared about him, he knew he could try. He knew he could start to heal, start to let go of the past, start to build a future with Anna. That evening, as The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Elias went down to the harbor. The sea was calm, its surface reflecting the colors of the sky, the waves gently lapping against the shore, a soothing sound that calmed his racing heart. He walked along the dock, his boots crunching on the wooden planks until he reached the spot where he and Lars had once. He was afraid she would disappear, as if this moment was a dream that would end at any second. For the first time in 20 years, he felt at peace, a sense of calm that he had not felt since before the storm. He knew that the road to forgiveness would be long, that there would be days when Anna would be angry, when the pain would be too much, but he was ready to walk it with Anna by his side, with the memory of Clara guiding him, with the hope of a better future. Chapter 3: Shadows of the Past. The days that followed were a mix of joy and pain for Elias, a delicate balance between healing and hurting, between hope and despair. He moved into the cottage with Anna, returning to the home he had left so many years ago, a home that was both familiar and foreign, filled with memories of Clara and Anna, of laughter and love, but also of loss and regret. It was strange being back sleeping in the same bed he had shared with Clara, eating at the same table, walking through the same rooms, yet everything felt different, as if he was an outsider in his own home, a stranger in the life he had once lived. Anna was slowly opening up to him, sharing stories of her childhood, of the years he had missed, of the way she had grown up without a father, of the struggles she and Clara had faced after he left. She told him about her first day of school, how she had cried because all the other children had fathers to drop them off, how she had lied and said her father was a sailor away at sea. She told him about her first heartbreak, about the boy who had broken her heart, and how Clara had held her while she cried, telling her that one day her father would come home, that he loved her more than anything. She told him about her job at the village library, about the books she loved, about the friends she had made, about the life she had built for herself, a life that had been missing him, but had gone on without him. Elias listened, hanging on every word, his heart aching for the daughter he had missed, for the moments he had not been there to share, for the pain she had endured because of his mistake. He asked questions, lots of questions, trying to fill in, to tell her he was sorry, to tell her he loved her, to hold her one last time. He would never get that time back, never get to make things right with her. The pain was so intense he thought he might die from it. Thomas stood beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder, his touch gentle and comforting. "I'm sorry, Elias. I know this is hard. I know you loved her. We all did. But Clara would want you to be here, to be with Anna. She's all you have left. She's the only family you have now." Elias looked up, his eyes red and swollen, his face streaked with tears. "Anna hates me. She won't even talk to me. I saw her just now, and she walked away. She doesn't want anything to do with me. I don't blame her. I left her when she was just a little girl, left her to grow up without a father. She has every right to hate me. She doesn't hate you," Thomas said, his voice soft, his eyes filled with compassion. "She's hot, angry, confused. You left her when she was just 3 years old, a little girl who needed her father. She grew up without you. knowing if you loved her. She's spent her whole life wondering where you were, why you didn't come back. But she's always wondered about you, always hoped you'd come home. She talks about you sometimes, asks me what you were like, what happened to you. She doesn't hate you, Elias. She just doesn't know how to feel about you. Elias nodded, wiping his tears with the back of his hand, a glimmer of hope stirring in his chest. Maybe Thomas was right. Maybe Anna didn't hate him. Maybe she was just hot, just confused. Maybe he had a chance to make things right with her, to be the father she deserved, even after all these years. I need to talk to her, to explain everything, to tell her how sorry I am, how much I missed her, how much I love her. I need to ask for her forgiveness. Go to her, Thomas said, nodding, his voice firm. She's in Clara's old cottage, the one with the red door on the edge of the village. She lives there alone ever since Clara died. She'll listen, I promise. She's been waiting for this day, even if she doesn't know it. Elias stood up, his legs unsteady, his body still shaking from the pain of losing Clara. the red door, each step feeling like a mile, but each step bringing him closer to the daughter he had missed for so long. He knew he had to do this for Clara, for Anna, for himself. He had to face his past, to seek forgiveness, to try to build a future with the only family he had left. When he reached the door, he hesitated, his hand hovering over the doorknob, his heart pounding in his chest, his mind filled with fear. What if she didn't want to see him? What if she told him to leave? What if she slammed the door in his face? He closed his eyes, said a silent prayer, a prayer that she would listen, that she would give him a chance, and he knocked, the sound echoing through the quiet street. The door opened, and Anna stood there, her arms crossed over her chest, her face cold, her eyes filled with anger and pain, a look that cut Elias to the core. What do you want? She asked, her voice sharp, her tone laced with bitterness, as if just seeing him made her angry. Elias looked at her, his heart breaking, his voice trembling. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I know I have no right to be here, no right to ask for your forgiveness, but I need to talk to you. Just give me a chance to explain. Anna stared at him for a moment, her eyes narrowed with determination as she sat down beside him on the couch in the cottage. "Dad, I have something to ask you," she said, her voice soft but firm. "The lighthouse keeper is retiring. M.R. Henderson, the man who took over after you left, he's getting old. His legs are giving out, and he can't climb the stairs anymore. The village council is looking for someone new to take over, someone who knows the lighthouse, someone who loves the sea, someone who can be trusted to keep the light shining. I was wondering, would you want to go back, not as an exile, not as a prisoner of your guilt, but as someone who belongs there, as someone who can share the light with others, as someone who can honor the lighthouse's legacy. The Whispering Pines Chronicles, a novel of memory, legacy, and the light beyond the trees. Word count 4,000. Prologue, the last letter. The storm hit Whispering Pines at dusk, as it always did in mid-October. Rain lashed the gabled roofs of the small New England town, turning the dirt roads to mud and drowning the crickets' song in a steady drum. At the edge of town, where the pines grew thickest and the street lights faded to faint gold, stood Blackthorn House, a 3-story Victorian with peeling white paint, a wraparound porch, and a tower that jutted toward the stormy sky like a finger pointing to the past. Inside, the air smelled of cedar and old paper. A single lamp burned on a mahogany desk in the study, casting long shadows over walls lined with books and framed photographs. Illyria was 18 years old, with chestnut hair streaked with copper and eyes the color of storm. Warmed honey sat rigid in a leather chair. Her hands trembled as she held the envelope, its edges frayed, the handwriting looping and familiar her grandmother's. Clara Valls had died 3 days earlier, in her sleep, at 87. The funeral had been small, just Illyria and the town's aging pastor, for Clara had been a recluse, a woman who spoke to the trees more than her neighbors. To the townsfolk, she was the hermit of the pines, a strange old widow who never locked her doors but never let anyone in. To Illyria, she had been the whole world. The letter was dated 1 week before Clara's death. My dearest Lara, if you are reading this, I have gone to the woods where the pines sing, and I am no longer bound to this old house. Do not grieve, not as you think you should. Grief is love with nowhere to go, but my love for you will always live in the pines, in the fireflies, in the quiet moments you stop to listen. I have kept a secret all my life. A secret this town buried, a secret this house holds, a secret that is now yours. You are not just my granddaughter. You are the keeper